Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you were well, and it's a new day, it's a new dawn, and I am certainly feeling good. Today I am going to be speaking about something that I think most men need to hear. But even more importantly, I think many women will benefit from today's session for a number of reasons. The topic is she proud of you? Let me spin it in a different way. From the woman's perspective, are you proud of him? Now, I was drawn to this particular topic partly as a result of observations made over the prior days, being in the midst of loved ones and friends and strangers, and just sitting back and observing. One of the most important things, men, we have to get right is the power of observation. Sitting back and just observing. And once you've observed, collecting all that data and going to the second stage, which is inference. You infer from what you've observed. And number 3 is draw a conclusion. Most people have not been taught how to think. It's a simple process used in the scientific method. Observation, inferences, sometimes before your conclusions, you might have conjectures and then conclusions. Now, if you did it properly, if you did this in a Bayesian, following the Bayesian methodology, you would first of all state your priors and your biases, preconceptions. You state that in advance. And then you go through the process: observation, conjecture, inferences, conclusions. But the reason you state your biases first is so that you can adjust for errors brought into the process by your emotions, by your experiences, by your anecdotal perspectives, preconceptions. In any case, that is a useful thing that I would recommend to most men to get in the habit of doing. The scientific method is so well structured. Now, this is partly why I personally recommend that all men and even women study the sciences: science, engineering, technology, math, but most importantly, go through the process of thinking. There are parts of the STEM field that use more of their memory than they do their reasoning faculty. In any case, I deviate. Let me come back to today's session. Is she proud of you? I'm asking you as a man. And if you are a woman on the other side, are you proud of him? The past few days, I have interacted with so many people. You generally find that in a comfortable environment, in a natural environment, you tend to see the virtues and the vices of people, because people are not guarded. Alcohol is a useful way of enabling people to drop all inhibitions and be themselves. And that's where you also get to see who people really are. Now, in this few days that I have been interacting, particularly over a 2-day period, an event, one of the things I observed was how much, when I met couples, how much honor the woman had for the significant other, whether that be a husband, a partner by cohabitation or civil partnership, or whether that be a boyfriend, I always pay attention to how the woman describes the man in his absence or in his presence. And as she talks about him in his presence, I pay close attention to his body language and her body language. Because in observing, I can detect whether it's coming from a sincere place or if it's just a show, an act to make him feel good. But more importantly, when I look at the man, I can see in his eyes whether he feels like a king, whether he feels proud to be in union with this woman. Now, over the weekend, I have to say, I have never been so disappointed. I genuinely, in my entire life, I don't believe I've ever been in a social environment where the aura of the women said so much and the aura of the men said so much. Let me draw perhaps a reference to theology. Now, there are two ways of understanding ourselves: science and theology. You can only go to one of the two. Staying in between means you start to philosophize and theorize, and you're not really making much progress. Science and theology. Now, in theology, one of the things we understand from the written scriptures and books, particularly one particular doctrine says, well, husbands, love your wives. That's the command. Husbands, love your wives and be willing to give your life for her. In a nutshell. But what I always found fascinating in biblical scriptures, that's the mandate, that's the call. That is the instruction to the man as the head of the family. Husbands, love your wives. The charge to women was somehow and somewhat counterintuitive. It does not say, wives, love your husbands in return. It doesn't. And when I started my studies in theology, I puzzled, I pondered on that particular scripture. I couldn't understand why. In my makeup, it was supposed to be love. The process of reciprocity, you give and you receive, but you give back what you receive. The first instruction was to the man, because that's where headship comes from. Responsibility to be the leader, responsibility to love and to protect. That's where the charge really comes from. Be willing to give yourself for her as Christ did the church. The charge to the woman is not even the opposite. It's a functional equivalent. It says, wife, honor your husbands. Now, honor is a very, very complicated word. Most people do not use it because most people do not understand it. We understand respect. Respect, generally speaking, is earned. No one deserves respect. You earn someone's respect by your conduct, by your appearance, by your behavior, by your communication, by your empathy, your forgiveness, your friendliness. You earn respect by your humility, but respect is earned. If I met someone on the street, I can't just respect them. Now, what I can do is I can show them honor. And honor is a fascinating word because to show someone honor, firstly, you have to recognize their uniqueness. You have to recognize what makes them different to the next person. You have to understand what makes them special. You must understand, more importantly, that honor is an attitude, is a feeling, it's an action. But you also have to recognize that it's an instruction from the universe. You show respect because respect is due. And you give respect because it's earned. If someone is disrespectful to you, you don't have to respect them back, but you can honor them in return. It's a fascinating thing. The fascinating part of the scriptures talk about, as a matter of fact, if you go back to the first foundations of the entire commandments, the commandments which we have formed and built, our Judeo-Christian values and principles, the 10 Commandments was all about one word: honor. From the first to the last, honor. And it was teaching you two things: how to honor whatever you consider to be at the pinnacle of the hierarchy of humans. That pinnacle could be a deity, it could be something transcendental, but honor the Lord your God. The second is recognizing that we are spiritual beings, we live in a physical body, we have a mind. So it says honor the spirit. Honor is something you give to the person, not because of the physical, but because of the spirit. I'm honoring the spirit in you because I recognize the gift in you. But the second is actually honor your father and your mother so that your days will be long. That is the second command. You are now honoring the vessel the person comes in. So there are two combinations of honor. Now, I talk about this in many ways, and I've talked about this to many people. It's something that is hard to understand. I have met people who believe that their parents or their father or their mother are not deserving of respect. And they have good reasons. But I've always said to them, they are deserving of your honor. And even in situations and circumstances that defy the odds, whether that be incest, whether that be abuse, or its equivalent, or whatever derivative of the two, honor is always due and must and should be given. As the person's level of disrespect increases, your level of honor should increase. Said differently, as the level of dishonor from them to you increases, you exponentially increase your honor to them. The way I react to you shows my character. The way you react to me or respond to me shows your character. But I do not match your character with mine. I've used an example. Imagine two of us on a boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And we have an argument. Our boats are traveling and have been traveling side by side. And we've been having a conversation that has been generally respectful. Along the way, we get into an argument, a heated argument. Out of anger, I pick up my shotgun and I put a hole in my boat, and my boat starts to leak. It would be absurd of you to repeat the same action on your boat. You don't do what I have done. You stay in the place of honor, even when I show dishonor. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing this is because I'm going to come back to the point I started with when I said, is she proud of you? And for the woman, are you proud of him? People who've come from difficult circumstances, relationally, society-wise, family-wise, community-wise, often, even business-wise, often say, I do not like him and I do not like her, and therefore I do not respect them. Granted, but the mistake we make is we actually confuse respect with honor, and we withhold honor when it is due. Husbands, love thy wives. Wives, honor thy husbands. Now, in honor lies pride, but not pride of the individual, that you're actually proud of the person because you recognize what makes them unique, and you're affirming through your words, through your thoughts, through your actions, and through your presence, behavior, the fact that you recognize what makes that person unique and you're proud of them. Now think about this. Go back to your younger days when you were young. Now, there were times when I would go out with my father or my mother, and I would be embarrassed. Why? Because they would want to tell everyone who was present my accomplishments, or the accomplishments of my brothers, or the accomplishments of the group. So much so that I would often say, can you please stop telling people my business? But that was a mother who was proud. That's a father who was proud of the accomplishments of their kids. They couldn't wait to share the achievements of their children, no matter how small, because they were proud of them. Many people have been raised by parents who they never knew, who they never met, but sometimes who was not proud of them. So most people have not learned or experienced the gift and the power in being praised, in being celebrated, in being glorified, in being magnified. If you felt that experience, it's contagious. You walk around as though you have an S on your chest. You actually work hard because you become addicted. Maybe the wrong word, but you become accustomed to that look on your father's face or your mother's face, the smile on your mother's face when she's talking about her children. The people meet you first in spirit before they meet you in person. Now, I have been personally fascinated by how many people that I have never met but know so much about me. Why? Because my mum and my dad always talk about us. I could say the same thing for my siblings. Now, I used that explanation and I went into that detail to show that when you meet a child that knows that the parents are proud, especially the father is proud, he's unstoppable. Which is why partly I have said to many of my friends, female friends, you have to stop telling your male sons and your husbands that you love them. Granted. But the emphasis should be shifted towards honor. And every now and then, whenever you catch yourself trying to say, I love you, replace that with, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the man you've actually turned out to be. I'm proud of the fact that you're a great father. I'm proud of the fact that you're a loving husband. I'm proud of the fact that you always come back home to us. I'm proud of you. We are proud of you. Boys crave. Now, I have friends who have kids, and I know people who have kids. You cannot imagine how little praise most young men get. So much so that once it is said, I have seen in the eyes of both men who were young enough to be my sons and daughters, and men who were mature enough to be my friends. And I have seen the use of that word and how it changes their psyche, and suddenly it almost feels as though they are champions. They have an S on their chest and they can go out and they can try and do more, be more, and have more. Many people have said to them over the years, I love you, I love you, I love you. But men, we do not recognize love in the same way women do. We are functionally very different. We like praise. And that praise begins with the look on your face, the glimmer in your eyes, the smile, even before you start speaking. Before you speak, I have heard you. We can see that your energy, your vibration, your spirit is full of praise. And then when you speak, you bring into flesh all of the adoration you have inside you. Now, let's talk about relationships and how the whole concept of honor plays a role in relationships. Over the weekend, I was with a number of people, and I usually often ask open-ended questions. The purpose of that is to draw out from people their personalities, their uniqueness, to draw out from people their focus, their journey, their story. Closed-ended questions do not make relationships forge stronger or last long, because it's a yes or a no or one sentence. But if you ask an open-ended question, people can express themselves. The power to express. Open-ended questions make you interested. And if you're interested, you become interested. But it enables you to have a very quick understanding of the person and the people they revere or they honor or they esteem or they are proud of. Now, I said in many, many sessions ago, as men, we're built in such a fashion that we crave the affection, the adoration, the validation, the praise, the recognition, the love, the attention of those who we consider to be within our inner circle, whether those be men or women. Most of us have been raised by our mothers without fathers. So even so, we crave the love, the attention of our mothers, because we never really felt the love of a father in his ways, because our fathers were never there. Now I'm speaking for most of the population, especially population of men. Therefore, in the relationships, what I have found, and particularly over the weekend, in interacting with a few women, I have met women who were soft-spoken, gentle, with the right decorum, conversational ethics, conversational etiquettes, gentle natures, well-groomed, have come from good homes. And most men would not have recognized the lack of honor, the lack of esteem, the lack of praise, the lack of adoration they had towards their significant others. The men in their lives, most people would not have noticed. Usually it's very subtle. Sometimes it's almost a feeling of disgust. So let me ask the two questions again. Is she proud of you? Meaning, is your significant other proud of you? Number two, are you proud of him? It's a hard question to answer. And even within people I know who are much more mature, people who are my peer or in my peer group, I have found that perhaps if I were to aggregate all of the people that I have met in the West, of marriageable age, both those who are married in a relationship or unmarried, I guess the last two are unmarried, but those who are married in a relationship and not in a relationship, but dating, I would say that 9 in 10 of the cases, the women show no honor to the men. They have no admiration, they have no praise, they have no esteem associated with the men. Now there's a good reason why. I can't go into all of that, but I'll share a few. In the West, we've destroyed families, relationships. We've made the individual the focal group, but we've also civilized the West, made it peaceful, all things remaining equal, so much so that we've actually outsourced most of what men provided to communities. Most women do not know, do not see the purpose of men in their lives or in a community, because most of them have been raised into very peaceful nations. And the way things were in the past, whereby you couldn't walk down at 9 p.m. on a street that wasn't well lit, without a significant person around you, a man, a woman, a group, a brother, a father, an uncle, a friend, a masculine presence to make sure you were safe. We've moved away from that. And so in most of the West, there is no need, as far as women are concerned, for the protection of a man. As a matter of fact, a woman said that to me a few days ago. I don't need the protection of a man. And I don't need the provision of a man. And I don't even think I want a relationship. So I don't need a man to profess his love by his presence. And because I don't want any of the three, quite frankly, I don't see the purpose of a man's vision. In other words, the priesthood duties of a man. And I was shocked. I was shocked because in speaking further with the lady, I realized that this was not coming from her heart. It was coming from a conditioned place. Almost as though an ideology, she's been conditioned and she's been groomed. And despite having a sense of lack, she cannot get herself to deviate from a preconceived position she's taken as part of the woman code, and she is suffering. In any case, most of the men in her life, she doesn't admire. She made it clear, I don't really respect my father. Now, this was what started this conversation. Is she proud of you? In only 1 in 10 have I met women who are proud of their husbands, proud of their significant others, and proud of their partners. So, I'm going to try to address some of it today. It's too deep. It's too deep, and for that reason, men, there is a lot of work required on our part. A lot of work. I don't blame the women completely. They have some responsibility to bear, but not completely. We have created a generation or two of very weak beta males, fem males, and soft men. Now, we've lost a sense of who we are, our identity, and so we're trying too hard to conform to whatever the woman wants, so much so that we've lost sense of who we are. So I don't blame the women completely. I hold them responsible because they have raised the last 2 generations of men. Many of them have raised the men they actually loathe because they chose weak, poor men to procreate with, and men who never stayed. In any case, here is an advice to young men. I talk about the importance of the 18 years between 18 and 35 and how those years are so important. The decisions you make as a man in that period are critical to your long-term success and your long-term fulfillment, the success of your relationships, and who you will turn out to be. And more importantly, whether you have the ability to carry your cross up your hill. And in a nutshell, I make 3 or 4 recommendations that are very, very important, but rigid. Now, I use the word rigid, and in speaking with someone a few days ago, a young man, 22 years, I remember in a conversation we all had, I made reference to what I'm going to be telling you shortly, and he said, it's very rigid. And I said, yes, success is supposed to be rigid. The path of a man is supposed to be rigid. You can't be fluid. Women can afford to be fluid. Only women can have the fluidity and still have the benefits of achieving absolutely nothing, but can still win heavily in life. A woman can go through life from 18, not bothered, not concerned, no burden of performance, but wait at the finish line and get chosen and get provided for. Men, we cannot afford such path. So our pathway is rigid, and success is rigid. And it's a formula. You apply the formula, you master the craft, then you master the art. You apply both the science, the art, and you apply it in such a way over and over again so it becomes a craft. But initially, it is rigid. And the first step to understanding how to honor yourself as a man is to accept that your pathway is going to be rigid and you're not looking for validation from anybody out there but yourself. And what you should keep in mind is that hell on this earth that we are in will be to meet the person, the man that you could have been in the future but never became. So the only affirmation you want is your future self, which simply means you have to be so focused on allowing that part of you that is potential to bring itself into the future and become actual. And that means you take the path that is least traveled, a narrow path. Wide is the gate, and wide is the path that leads to destruction, and narrow is the way that leads to life, fulfillment, and success. You need a rigid path. And the first step is accepting and honoring yourself. Now, I talk about 3 or 4 things that must be done to give you that foundation so that you have a chance of success. The first is that your purpose, your goals, your dreams must be primacy. The preeminent position, your purpose, your dreams, your goals, and your aspirations. You have to go through education, whatever path you choose, formal or informal, get it done. But I recommend you put aside any form of serious relationship. You don't live with a woman. You don't coexist with a woman in the same house. I recommend you don't have a mono relationship or significant relationship, a romantic relationship that is intense until at least 30 years. Between 18 and 30, you have a few years to make the most important decisions of your life, 12 years. In that period, you do not get anyone pregnant and you do not marry or get married to anybody. You just focus on your dreams and your goals. 18 to 22, education. You might want to travel afterwards. I'll give you that. 22 to 23, perhaps you travel for a year. You need 10,000 hours to actually get good at something, which means you have to become an apprentice under another person. You have to learn. We have 10,000 hours of practice required, but there are 2,000 work hours every single year. So you need 5 years. 24 to 29 is that 5 years. But men do not do things in a straight line. This is the problem. We squiggle. We make mistakes. So I give you an extra year. 20%. And that gets you to 30. So at 30, you finish your education and you've got good in whatever profession or career or job that you may have been working in. You've actually become good at something, meaning you have the ability now to build, both financially, economically, but more importantly, you have a skill that people are willing to pay you for. You've worked from 26, from 24 all the way to 30, and you've labored very hard. 6 years of study and practice, and study and practice and work. At 30, you can start to look around for companionship, but I also recommend you delay that until 35 for a simple reason. Whilst you may have become a master or you've attained mastery or proficiency in something, you haven't failed. The first 6 years is not for failure. It's for security. It's for safety. You're being paid to learn a skill, to acquire some virtues, to develop the right attitude, both social, interpersonal skills, business skills, under someone's guidance. That is not for failure, that's for security. 30 to 35, another 5 years. That we allocate to failure. This is perhaps the most important part of your life as a man. That 5 years is where you start to pursue that purpose you have. You see, from 18 to 30, it's not for your purpose. That is for your stability, financial, economic, and actually so that you can learn something, so that you can say, I'm good at something. So you can build that pride, knowing that you've actually finished university or school. You've done the training, you've done the apprenticeship phase, you're working, and you've been promoted a few times over the 6-year period. It's the same as when I started martial arts in karate, Shotokan karate. White belt, then you get promoted. If you grade and pass your grade, then you get pushed up again, and then you keep going until you get to brown belt. You're learning something new, your confidence is building, you're being given a grade at the end of the phase that says you've done the work. That belt reaffirms your hard work, your commitment, your discipline, your focus, your strength, more importantly, your pride. When you get to 30, you have some security. You've saved, you've invested, and you've built up some reserve. But you're still a single, unmarried man. Perfect. Now you can fail. We give you 5 years, another 10,000 hours. Now, you don't need that much. You need half. But the idea should be you continue your job and your career, but you're doing something on the side that allows you to fail. Fail fast, fail early, fail forward. Fail fast, fail early, fail forward. Throw yourself into failure. Try things. Pursue that purpose you have. Pursue that goal. At this point, you don't have the burden of a family or responsibility. The only responsibility you have is to your passion and your dream and your purpose. You may not know your purpose, but you can discover it. You may not know your dream or your future, but you can actually sleep and dream a good dream. There'll be 7 years, there'll be fat years, and there'll be 7 years that are lean years. You've had your 7 years that are fat years, you need your lean years to prepare for what is to come. Failure is what we use as ingredients to build men into who they should be. Most men have not failed. When we fail as men, we take the path of least resistance. One of the reasons why I say forget relationship is so that you can become something of yourself. In the charge that David gave to his son, Solomon, powerful. He said, I have come to my time where I shall go and join my ancestors. Now be strong and show yourself a man. Obey the laws, obey the precepts, obey the commandments, obey the norms, obey the teachings, obey the laws. As a man, you need the period of failure because that helps you form the shoulders upon which you will carry that cross. The cross could be the cross of salvation. It could be the cross of a family. It could be the burden of masculinity. It could be the pressure of the community. But you have to build those shoulders so that they can carry the weight, the responsibility that comes with manhood, provision, protection, the priestly duties, and the ability to profess your love in the right manner. Most men cannot profess their love because they haven't lived. They've been sucking on mama's breasts and they move straight to sucking on their girlfriend's breast. They never had a period of peace in between. They never developed their jaws. They've been having too much milk and therefore they are still boys. The software might be, in years chronologically, 30 or 40, 50, but internally, the hardware could be chronologically 30, 40, 50, but the software is still 18, still sucking on mama's breast. You have to learn how to go through the wilderness. 30 to 35. A man is only as faithful as the temptations he has overcome. And you'll be tested for power, you'll be tested for money, and you'll be tested for your loins. All of these tests seldom occur and come before 35. Now we go back to what I started with, which is she proud of you? And my experience has been, when I've looked at some of these men, I can see that most of these men started too early. They either got married way too early in their 20s, and the balance of power was on the woman's side, so she had no reverence for him. The story we hear about David, how he protected a sheep, how he killed the lion and the bear, but also how he killed Goliath. Now, even if you do not believe the story, let's just go with that for a second. The account of the story of David is powerful. Here he comes, bringing food for his brothers who are in the army, and he hears this tall, strong, strapping-looking fella abusing the Israelites, his people. And he goes up and he says, what will be the reward for the person who defeats that man? And they tell him, and he says, interesting. His first reaction is, who is this man who is abusing my people? The point of this is David had been in the wilderness and had gone through the temptations and the battles and the challenges. And when you've actually battled with a lion, if you believe the story, then you don't fear man. As a matter of fact, if you've ever owned or been around lions, you don't fear dogs. So he had fought bears and wild beasts. Why would he fear a man with a knife or a sword? He had failed. Which is why being a king was easy for David. And which is also why he never changed the psalmist he was in his heart, even though a king. Most men have not formed the archetype of who they should be before they start relationships. So they sacrifice their purpose and their dreams on the altar of what is between a woman's legs. And the woman will never honor you, and she will never revere you or esteem you. Why? Because she controls you, and because she knows you haven't done anything other than accept her as a wife or become a father. She doesn't really esteem you because you haven't done anything. I'm not talking about achieving tangible results only. I'm simply saying, where are your scars to show that you went out into the wilderness and you hunted for game and you came back with some or you didn't? Where are your scars? Most men do not have any scars, so women do not revere them. If we were to go back to the days, and here is a question to young men as I start today's session. I've seen a number of movies, Braveheart, The 13th Warrior, what was the second one? The First Night. There's some movies where you tend to see men who were physical and who gave their lives for the king, country, family. Let's just imagine that we were to go back to such a time and ask yourself a simple question. What kind of man would you be? Because back then, the men who were honored and praised and revered and esteemed were those who had the scars, courage, those who were disciplined, structured, those who had gone out there and tried and failed. Sometimes they came back without arms, pierced with swords, but they were honored. Why? Because they were men. And they understood the importance of the sacrifice of something greater, giving up something less for something greater. Most of the men these days, yes, you make money. That's easy. These days, it's quite easy. When I started my career, it was hard. I remember when if you made 30,000, if you made 25,000 pounds, you were making very, 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 very good money. Today, most people are making 6 figures. working from home. What you earn doesn't make you a man. It just means you can provide. And over the weekend, when I was with and among some of these women, as I looked at these women, the aura was that they were looking for men to support them because the men in their lives had failed in their first duty as men. That is exactly what I felt. These were men that I wouldn't actually be with in the battlefield. I hate to say this, but I'd shoot them first. Say that again. And I said this to someone before. It wasn't a nice thing to say, but I meant it. At the time, I meant it. In this particular instance, this was someone who was so fearful. And there's nothing with fear, but this was someone who I had trained with in martial arts, and we in a dojo, you're practicing with people you know. They might be stronger or better than you, but people you know, and you're sparring, and the fear in him was so strong. And I would observe that whenever he would go to spar with the women, because we allow each other to spar with each other, and my coach would say, well, go easy on the girls, take it easy. His confidence would start to beam, and I couldn't understand it. It didn't matter who he was sparring with within men. He felt as though he was about to be killed. He was dripping of fear. It didn't matter how small or how large. He was always fearful when he was against other men. And I said to him once, I said, if we were in an army and you were in my team, I'll shoot you first before I move into the battlefield. And I'll do so that I don't have the burden and that fear, that spirit of fear around me. But more importantly, so I know that I have nobody to look to. Whereas having you is just another dead wood I'm carrying. How can you be so fearful amongst men who care for you, but are trying to train you to become the best version of yourself as a martial artist? When we say let's spar, you almost hyperventilate it. In the old times, I'll shoot you. I'll put a sword straight through you. Why? Because you're a liability. And in the battlefield, the risk is so high. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who becomes the weakest link. Now, we don't care that much. I should say this differently. We understand that there is always a weakest link, and I could be the weakest link, but you have to play your part as a man. And we've raised boys into men who are still boys emotionally, which is partly why most women do not honor them, and are not proud of them, and do not speak in esteem of them. And I could see this in the event and in the conversations. Yes, you can provide. Yes, you're making money. Yes, but there are no stories. She cannot chronicle your life. She cannot talk about your deeds. She cannot talk about your achievements. She cannot talk about your failures. She cannot talk about you. Why? Because she's not proud of the man you are presently, or of the man you've journeyed into becoming. What she can say is that she's probably nursed you like a mother. One of the worst things men can do is allow your significant others to nurse you like a mother. You ought to be ashamed if you allow that to take place. Your role is to provide and protect and give your life if needed. So you're providing the role of a father. A father steps forward and says, take my life. Not them, me first. When a woman is playing that reverse role, it's over. Of course, she will not be proud of you. She doesn't esteem you. She doesn't revere you. She doesn't honor you. She doesn't adore you. The rigid path is the right path for men. Get to the point of failure. Now, 35 is when I say, you've come to a place of beginning. It's like your first black belt. I tell other people, no, you're focused too much. And I remember so many people that I have had the opportunity of working with and being around. And you can see that they're really working hard to get their black belt. And I keep saying, no, you've got this wrong. It begins at black belt. Your first Dan, your first black belt, that's when it starts. That's when it really starts. That's when the training starts. You're thinking it's the finish line. No, it's the first line. Your second black is when you start to develop some confidence. Your third black is when you start to develop even more competence and ability. Your fourth is when you actually come to a place of saying, okay, I can teach. I understand. Now, it doesn't have to be too rigid, but the point is, it begins at black. It begins at 35. You've done something and been competent at something. You've failed, successfully failed, and you've come into your manhood. So there's almost an aura, a feeling of peace. That's the word, peace, that you have. You're not confused. Amongst other men, you're comfortable in their presence. You're comfortable at the occasion. You're not pressured. You're not trying too hard to fit in, or you're not trying too hard to sound smart. It's unnecessary because you've chosen a path and you've made the best of your path, whatever that path may have been. It could have been chasing rabbits in the wilderness or chasing pheasants. It doesn't matter, but you chose a path and you are at peace with the man you've come to become. So that when the woman comes into your life, you're not looking for affirmation and validation. And you take her honor, but you don't need her honor because you've honored yourself with your gifts and your substance. Now, I'm going to stop today's session here, and I hope it's been useful. In the next session, I'll talk about something connected to this, but from a female perspective. I hope it's been useful.